Stella McCartney was only a child in 1980 when her father, Paul McCartney, was famously arrested in Japan for carrying nearly half a pound of marijuana. Yet the incident didn't surprise her. I remember the guard opening up that suitcase, and I remember him picking up a pillowcase worth of skunk weed, the fashion designer recalls in her father's new oral history, Wings, the story of a band on the run. Even a 9-year-old could have hidden skunk weed better than my parents, but they were like, it was too good to leave behind. The book paints a vivid picture of Paul's turbulent decade after the Beatles disbanded in 1970, as he struggled to redefine himself outside the shadow of the Fab Four. During this period, McCartney frequently used marijuana, so much that, at one point, he was too high to meet Bob Marley. He and his wife Linda eventually formed Wings and took their new band on the road with their children, often without even planning official tour dates. Instead, one of the most recognizable musicians in the world would show up at various colleges and ask if his band could perform. At their debut performance in Nottingham in 1972, attendee Brian Pearson remembers Linda playing keyboards and singing surrounded by an entourage of babies and young children. At the time, Wings only had 11 original songs, enough for a roughly 33-minute set. McCartney recalls in the book that he refused to include any Beatles material in the show. They wanted longer, so we repeated things, he writes in the volume, edited by Ted Widmer. Surprisingly, even as a former Beatle, McCartney's new approach didn't always open doors. After Nottingham, we decided to ring leads ahead, but it never came off because the fellow wanted a contract, proof of who we were, assurances. So, sod it, McCartney remembers. We carried on to York. They couldn't give us the big hall, so we took the dining hall. When they tried to play a show in Cardiff, they were turned down because the venue was booked for a badminton game. In Hull, McCartney discovered just how rough life on the road had become. The group stayed in what Linda described as a third-rate hotel, where they were approached by the night manager. This little bald fellow came up to us and said, "Does one of you people own that black and white dog?" recalls Wings drummer Denny Sewell. Paul goes, "Yeah, that's my dog, Lucky. Why?" And the manager says, "Well, he shat in the hall. You're gonna have to clean this up." So Paul went and cleaned it up. Another major shift from his Beatles days came with how critics received his music. The 1971 album Ram, the only one officially credited to Paul and Linda McCartney, was heavily criticized. John Landau, writing for Rolling Stone, called it the nadir in the decomposition of 60s rock thus far, while New Musical Express in the UK described it as an excursion into almost unrelieved tedium, with not one worthwhile or lasting piece of music. Although McCartney often insisted, "I've learned not to care what they say," the harsh criticism occasionally got under his skin after a British journalist wrote a scathing review of a Wings concert he hadn't even attended. Paul and Linda decided to take their revenge, and it wasn't a kind one.